Welcome to the Exponential Potential Podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change with your hosts, Jennifer Evans and Claire Oatway. Join us and feel uplifted and inspired as we share with you powerful and insightful stories, top tips and tools with our expert guests on an array of topics covering all aspects of life and business, designed to ignite your potential and help you thrive in times of great change. Hello and welcome everybody to the Exponential Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Evans, aka Zen Jen, and today we have the wonderful Susan Crossman. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Okay, great. So we're going to be talking today with Susan about write a topic, transform your life. And some of the key things we're going to be sharing with you today are how writing a book is transformational. What are the main reasons why people don't write that book? And Susan will also be sharing with you some of her top tips of how you can get started and make it easier. So just a quick introduction to Susan. Susan helps mission-focused coaches, leaders, and innovators write and publish compelling books that make a difference in their business and their world. She believes a well-written book can be a powerful force for good in our world, and she takes delight in assisting her clients to greater peace-driven authority. So, wow. Yeah, it sounds like that's a real passion for you, Susan.
Yes, it is. It is. It's taken me a while to get to this point where I've really understood what I'm here to do. But now that I have those pieces figured out, it's really fun for me.
And what sort of brought you to this point of assisting people with writing a compelling, powerful book? What is it that brought you here, and how did you get to become an expert?
Can I tell you a story?
Please,
Can I start with a story?
We love stories.
We like stories. I do too.
We do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I've been a professional writer my entire career. As a little girl, all I wanted to do was be a writer. And so I created a path in life, or life created it for me, so that, finished university, and right off the bat, I had jobs in writing in the professional capacity. So journalism, I worked in government communications and corporate communications, and then ended up in a marketing agency. So all the way along, I was able to support myself as a writer. But the dream was to write a book. And there just came a point where I started that book. And I figured at the time, being a little bit younger than I am now, but I thought, okay, professional writer, everybody's always said I'm a really great writer. How hard can this be? Like, I just need to knuckle down and write that book. And so I got started and felt like the rug had been pulled right out from beneath me. It was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And it was harder, I know, in hindsight, for a lot of reasons, one of which was self-confidence. I didn't know how to write a book. I knew nothing about books. Well, I was an avid reader, but how do you make that? Yeah, a whole lot of things really coalesced in me so that it took 13 years before I finally finished my first book. And that was, a humbling experience, if nothing else. But that was followed by, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And do you find that that's quite common with people writing books? They get stuck and it takes them a very long time to actually get to that point, right, I'm going to do it, and follow that through.
Exactly. And that's why I do what I do, because it doesn't have to take 13 years. And having been through that myself, I recognized I had no support team. I didn't get any help with it. I had mindset issues that were stopping me, and beliefs and all kinds of things. I didn't have the skill set, didn't have a neural network in place to support book writing. A lot of things. It's actually quite complex to write a book, which I didn't know when I started. So that's, now that I've figured out a lot of these pieces, it's so exciting for me to be able to take what I know and help other people write the books that they're here to contribute in ways that support them and that kind of coordinate with their way of being in the world, because I think there isn't really one way of writing a book, that we need to
Mhm.
figure out the process that works for us.
And I understand you've written 5 books, Susan, and you're on your 6th?
Yes, yes. And, to be honest, the fourth and fifth ones were so easy and so fast. I actually,
Mhm,
I'd say not that it was easy, but I knew what I was doing. That first book is your starter book, and
mhm.
you're learning how to be in relationship with yourself and the book as you're writing it. And so I think that's why a lot of people do struggle and take a long time, is they're figuring it out. The second book, you know what's coming, and you know what works for you, and you've learned a lot about how you write books. So the second one is a lot easier. You're more comfortable with the project.
Mhm.
And then I found with the third, fourth, and fifth, it was just I figured I knew what I was doing by this point. But I think too, with that first book, you don't have any evidence that you can do this. But with the second book and beyond, you've proven to yourself that you can do it, and so
Yeah.
it's a question of just getting
And
better at your skill set.
do you still have support as when you write a book or when you're starting a new project? Do you still have support? Do you find it's easier to have support no matter what level you're at to continue that inspiration or sharing of ideas and accountability? Do you still have that in place?
I don't need the accountability anymore, and
Mhm.
actually, that's not quite true. I'm traditionally published, and so whenever I have another book coming, I talk to my publisher, and there will be a legal contract in place saying, "Okay, we need the manuscript by such and such a date." And that's my accountability. I have a
Yeah.
contractual obligation to deliver that manuscript, and that is highly motivating for me to get that done. But in
Right.
terms of a team, I don't have a writing buddy, or I think too, where I am now in my own evolution is that I get a lot of spiritual support. I have spiritual mentors, and all of my friends, of course, are swimming in this pond. So
Mhm.
the support that I really benefit from most at this point is seeing this book as a part of my spiritual journey, and part
Mhm.
of my mission, and part of what I'm on the planet to do. And so the the mindset pieces have become soul set pieces for me.
Mhm. And that leads us nicely into so how does writing a book transform people's lives? How is that a transformational thing to do?
Oh boy, it's one of my favorite topics. I look at it as a question of the bridges that we're building with that book, and there are three transformations really that we bridge to in the writing of the book. The deepest one is the sense of who we think we are. Before
Mhm.
we write that first book, we don't self-identify as an author. And so
Right.
that's not built into our identity, is we're not an author. So who do I think I am to be writing a book? Who's going to read this book? What have I got to say? It's all been said before. All of those programs
Yes.
start running in our head.
Yeah, I went through that.
You did that too.
Yes,
So did
yeah,
I. It's
yeah.
it's oddly normal to feel that
Mm.
way. But in the writing of the book, as you write that book, you're proving to yourself that you are an author. And of course, once that book
Mhm.
is published, you can't hide behind who do I think I am to write a book anymore, because you've done it. And
Yes.
that is a huge transformation. Our sense of who we are expands enormously once we've done it. And so I think that's probably the biggest transformation, is in the sense,
Mhm.
but we are also transforming our readers' worlds.
Right, yes,
And
of
in
course.
writing, right, your book, when you made that book available to people, you were giving them opportunities to see the world in ways they hadn't seen it before.
Mhm.
And
So
that's a huge gift.
a completely different perspective that they haven't seen.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how
And
exciting is that?
and then the ripple effect of that.
Bingo.
Yeah.
You change one life with your book, and that one life affects seven, and those seven affect 20, or I don't know what the exponential is, but it is exponential.
Mhm.
And again, often I find with my clients, they're not thinking that way when they start their first book. They don't feel that
Yes. And also, I think when you write, the first time you write a book, you're so focused on you and how you feel about it, you're forgetting the impact that this may have on one person and that ripple effect, or two people, or three people. Yes. Yeah.
yet. It's true. And if you have felt the siren call of the book that you're here to write, my perspective is that the universe has been preparing you to be the perfect funnel through which that book was meant to flow since at least the day you were born, if not longer.
Hmm.
And so, the family that you were born into, the siblings that you may or may not have had, the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the family lineage, the ancestry, the schools you went to, the friends you had at school, the tragedies in the schoolyard, the training experiences, the jobs, the lovers, the friends, all of that burnishes you into this amazing funnel, this amazing mold uh, that the divine light of the universe kind of flows through you with that information, and only you can write that book. And so I
Mm.
just find that so exciting for people that I can't wait to
That
see what that's going to look like.
that's really powerful as well, isn't it?
It
That's
is.
when you think about writing a book and you come from that perspective, it's an incredibly powerful. You can feel the energy of it moving you forward. Yeah.
It is powerful, and it's
Mm.
that part of what really excites me is seeing these books that we write, and certainly my clients in particular, as being an opportunity to amplify what they're on the
Hmm.
planet to do. That they are messages that the world needs to hear, and only you can do that. Nobody else
Right.
can write your book.
So that kind of ties into the third reason, the third transformational part of writing a book. So you're transforming your
Yes,
life
it
as you're
does.
writing that book. You're bringing awareness to yourself and all those beliefs and things, and then you're transforming other people's lives. And then the third part of that transformation is,
You are changing the trajectory of your entire life. So you
mhm,
are bridging to your future self. You are creating a transformation in who you are creating yourself to be. And so what I experienced, well, with as an author generally, is doors have opened for me that wouldn't have opened for me if I hadn't become an author.
mhm,
Being on this podcast, I wouldn't be here likely if I wasn't in the book world or hadn't finished that first book. It would be impossible for me to have done all the other things that I've done to become a book coach and an editor, and finally someone who's very passionate about helping people
mhm.
write powerful books. So that's huge for people. The people that you meet, idle conversations. Oh, you're an author? Tell me about that. And so
Mhm.
you end up in conversations that end up changing your life in many ways. So yeah, your future will change dramatically by writing a book. And we
I
can't predict
love
what that
that.
looks like. Yeah.
No, no,
Isn't that
it's
fun?
that's the adventure, isn't it? I have no idea. Yeah, I love that.
And your life
Um,
is going to change anyway. I mean, that's the neat thing. Our life
yes.
will change regardless. But in becoming an author, in becoming the author who we are here to be,
Hmm.
we are actively co-creating with the universe in what that change is going to
Hmm. Mm. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. So when we know
be.
that,
It's so
I
fun.
mean that is that maybe one of the reasons that people don't write a book is because that just could be so scary to people. So
It's very
yeah,
vulnerable. Well,
yes, yeah.
I think people often don't have that vision for what it is they're really doing when they're writing a book.
Hmm.
I find a lot of people are worried because they feel it's a vanity project. And that's how I felt with that first book, that it was selfish of me to spend all this time writing a book. My husband at the time and I, we had 5 kids and stepkids. We had a mortgage, we had dogs, we had career, like big, messy, busy family. So
Hmm.
in squirreling myself away to write a book, how was this going to contribute? This
Right.
was selfish, really selfish. I didn't see it as I do in hindsight now as, whoa, it was really important that I get that book done. But we don't, we connect the dots going backwards rather than forwards. So I think that is a big reason people aren't connected to that bigger picture of what they're here to do. And it seems very grandiose and kind of egotistical to think that the universe has
Yeah.
designated you as the person to write this book, but it really isn't. It's very practical to go, well,
Yes.
okay, this book is downloading in me, and I guess that's what I'm meant to do, so I'll just do it. So we need to get out of our own head and heart.
Yes. And I'm sure that when you were thinking those 13 years of writing a book, you had this sense within you that you needed to do it if you were able to sort of drop into your body a little bit more and not get in your head. You
Yeah, and actually what actually happened was the I've been plugging away at it for 11 years or so. And then my husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And
Yeah.
then just a few months later, he died. And so there I was in my 40s with two young kids to still
Yeah.
raise. And I had to take a big hard look at my life and
Mhm.
what was I going to do with it? Like it was a very bewildering, hurtful, terrible time in a lot of ways, very
Yes.
traumatic. And out of that came the realization that I didn't know how much time I was going to have left. And if
Right.
I was serious about this book, which was a calling in my heart, I had to really make it a priority
Mhm.
because I simply didn't want to die not having finished my book, at least not having finished the manuscript. Whatever happened after that, I had no clue how to get published. So
Right.
then I really doubled down and I really made it a priority. I finished it. I got a couple of editors involved, which is really important. And lo and behold, I got published. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that was important. That it really needed to happen, and the facilitation of my dear husband's death was that it changed the trajectory of my life as well. But you don't
That
need to have someone die in order to finish a book, and
No,
that
I
it
would
doesn't have
hope
to happen
not.
that way.
No, no, we can make it easier for ourselves. So
Definitely, yes.
what other reasons do people not pick up that pen or sort of pick up the pen and put it down and pick it up and put it down? What are the other reasons that people either don't start a book or finish their book?
Right. Well, it is a big job for one thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's, I know there are a lot of programs out there and people who say, "Oh, just take a couple of weeks and write a book." Or you can do this in a month, or it's step by step. Just do these 5 steps and you'll have written your book. And I feel that does a disservice to people who want to write a quality book, like
Yes.
a message book, because writing a book, I believe, is an act of craftsmanship. And there's a
Yes.
lot that goes into writing a powerful book. It's not something we dash off in our sleep usually. I mean, we do. I appreciate the importance of downloads. We get
Mhm.
divine downloads, and we've probably all had that experience where you write and it just flows out of you, and it's a magical feeling. And for sure, that
Yes.
is part of it. But there's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into it. There's a lot of hard work that actually goes into it. And I think that's a bit overwhelming for people that,
Mhm.
you just got to stick with it. And so I think that the time that it can take is off putting for people sometimes. And people really don't know what they're doing. Like I didn't know with that first
Yes.
book. I hadn't studied book structure at that point. I've now become an avid student of book structure, whether
Mhm.
it's fiction, nonfiction, memoir, whatever. There are certain conventions around structuring a book that make for a better book. Well, I
Right.
didn't know that at the time, and most people don't study that, so they don't know what they're doing. And oh, here's something really fun. I work with a lot of perfectionists, and they are used to, and ask me how I know, but a perfectionist typically is used to doing things so well, and
Yes.
everything they do in life, they have mastered their skill. They've mastered their knowledge. They've mastered their coaching or whatever their gift to the world is. They're really
Mhm.
good at it. And then they sit down to write a book, which is brand new to them. And they get
Yeah.
very frustrated because they haven't mastered it. And what I can give your listeners, your podcast guests, as kind of a comfort is, you know what? Your brain has not developed a neural network prior to writing that first book. So, for
Mm.
example, when we learn to ride a bike,
Yes.
it's very hard and complicated, and your foot has to do this, and then your other foot does this, and then your hands are on the handlebars, and you're supposed to be scanning everywhere, and you've got that balance thing there. That's a lot for your brain to have to figure out if it's never done that before. So
Yes.
over the
Yeah.
time, yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Over the
Yeah.
time of learning to ride your bike, your brain is going, okay, okay, let's build these little neurological highways in there, so that over time you've got the neural network in place that supports riding a bike. It's no different with writing a book. You don't have the neural network in place. So you sit down and your brain's going, now, no, sorry, now what? What do I do
What
now?
now?
What?
Yeah.
And that grows. That's, yeah,
And on top of that, you've got that whole, as you mentioned before, that whole vulnerability and the belief systems that come into place, and the mindset and the things that hold us and keep us stuck about not feeling good enough and things. So would you say that's also another
with
reason why
your
people, yes, is that another reason why
bingo.
people don't write big books? It's because, oh God, that's so scary. I'm not good enough. Who's going to listen? Who's going to read it? What have I got to
Yeah.
say that's new? And that whole,
Like,
and the perfection as well, as you said. You can spend years and years and not do anything because it's in your mind, it's not perfect. Is there
yeah.
anything else that you'd like to touch on why people don't write books? Have we covered it pretty much?
Yeah, I think that's about it. It's
Mm,
not, I think not understanding the process too is kind of part of all of this, is that you don't have to do it perfectly, because you are going to hire an editor to edit your book. Like, the
yes.
really best books are properly professionally edited, and your
Mhm.
editor is part of your team. They are there to make you look as fabulously brilliant as you really are. Kind of in line with the skill set issue. I work with people who are so brilliant and so good at what they do, but they haven't spent 40 years becoming a better writer. They haven't
Mhm.
had, they may write well, but there's a real high level of excellence that relates to
Mhm.
the craftsmanship of writing. And so they haven't gone that route to become
Yes.
so excellence focused in the craft of writing. But that's why you hire an editor, is that
Mhm.
an editor is there to do the mechanics, if you like, of helping ensure that that book is phenomenal. So they're part of your team, and there's no shame in having an editor. I worked, I remember, in news way back at the start of my writing career. I guess I would have had 3 or 4 editors look up my news articles before they would be
Right.
published.
Yeah.
You can get your ego all in a knot over that, to go, well, why are they changing this word? And I liked that word and all the rest of
Mhm.
it. But their job is to make sure that the readers are well served. And that's the
That's
same
what,
thing in book writing.
yeah, that's what their expertise is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they're there for. That's what they love doing.
Yes.
And as
Yeah.
as an editor, I get it. It's so fun to edit books.
um so we've talked about why people don't write a book. What type of people do you find usually, what are the type of people that write books? Is there a typical type of person?
I'm not sure if I see typical, because there are so many different kinds of books. And I've written fiction, nonfiction, a collection of short stories.
Mhm.
Me as a writer, I've written lots of different kinds of books. I do think there are some people that are drawn to fiction more than nonfiction quite often.
Mhm.
Some people that are drawn to memoir writing or self-help writing. So I can't characterize there being a real type. I think someone who is just passionate about expression,
Mm.
and and as writers, I think we have a job to do. I think we are here to interpret the human experience for other people, and our
Right.
medium is the book. That we are interpreters, and so I think people who feel the call to help understand our world in a stronger way, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I think those are the people who tend to end up writing books. And they may not
Right.
be consciously aware of that, and not, they may
Yes.
not know
Yeah.
that that's what they're doing, because some of us are just simply born to write, and we can't get away from
Yeah.
that. I'm in my soul, I'm a writer, and I work with some people who are like that, and some people who in their soul are healers. or
And
incubators.
they want to share their message. They want to assist. They want to help
They
others.
do
Yeah,
so
yeah,
badly.
yeah, yes, yeah. I
So
know the feeling.
yeah,
Yeah. Um. So
yeah, and
how
I particularly work with mission people.
they want to
Sorry,
share
go
their
ahead.
message? No, 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 no. So
Yes.
want mission people? You mean that they have a message? They want to share it. They have a mission. They want to share that mission. They want to make the world a better place.
Mhm.
They want to make a difference. They want to have an impact. Yeah, yeah. Lovely, beautiful. So how do people make it easier for themselves? Because it's hard and it's challenging. So how can we start to write that book, and how do we make it easier?
Well, start with why. I always start with why. Why do you want to do this? What change do you want to see happen in your world with this
Hmm.
book? What Why do you want to share your message? And that really makes a big difference all the way along the line from publishing to book marketing. If you know why you're doing what you're doing, then you can make much better decisions about everything. And so the why is, as it is in every other sphere of activity, it's critically important that you know why.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I would be very connected to my why. Like,
Right.
first off, why do you, before you think about anything, why do you want to do this? And then I think the next step would be to figure out, okay, well, what is my message? What do I want to share?
Hmm.
What is this book about? And what is challenging for some people, and I see their energy fields and the books that are in the energy fields. And so sometimes people may have 3 or 4 or 5 books in their energy field. They may be here to write numerous books and they're all competing for attention all at the same time. So it can be a little confusing to know which book am I writing first.
Right.
But getting some clarity around what is this book and what do I want to share with people is really, I would say, the next step. Then I think it helps to have a structure of some sort. Even
Hmm.
if you're a person who downloads, reading is a linear experience. And so
Mm.
to serve your readers, you need structure in order
Hmm.
to serve that. That
Yeah.
download does need to be packaged in a way that people can access it.
Hmm.
If it's too floaty, you're going to float people all the way over here somewhere, and then
Yeah.
you're not influencing them or impacting them. You're giving them a floaty experience, which has value too, but
Hmm.
it's not. Go back to your why. Is that why you're doing this? So, and maybe
Yeah.
it is. That's okay.
Yeah.
No judgment. So I think that would be the next thing, and creating the time.
Hmm.
We don't get time to write a book. We create time to write a book. And I think back to, I think it would have been my second, well, actually, second and third and fourth books. Widowed mom, 2 young kids to raise, band practice, soccer practice. I have an elderly mom in my life who's physically disabled,
Right.
busy, busy,
That's
building a business to support my family, like a really crazy busy. This is not a life that has time to write a book,
no. That was yeah.
every minute. And so what I did for some of those books anyway was get up at 4:30 every morning, 6 days a week, work till 6, which is when my regular day started. And I did that for 6, 7 months, however long that took. And then the book was done. But
That's
I had
commitment.
to, that's back to my why,
Yes.
so
So
I was really,
your why has to be a really strong, powerful why for
yes,
you, for somebody to be that committed to 4:30 in the morning to, before anyone else wakes up, before you start your day, you're up, you're writing a book. That's yeah,
and it was ugly.
that
I'm not saying it was fun. However, I knew at the end of it, I would have my book manuscript and I would have another book, and that's highly motivating. I have clients that will take Saturday mornings and they'll make a date
yes.
with themselves. That's their time to write the book. I've had clients who write their book during their commute on public transit.
Mm.
That's another good way to do it. But what works for you? That's how I did it. But I'm maybe not the base case for any of that. It's what do you need in order to stay committed and stay focused?
Yes. And where does it fit in your life, or how can you where are you, the other thing as well is a lot well, you had a very, very full life. in terms of busy with, and we all, a lot of us can make ourselves busy for the sake of being busy because we don't want to face, we know that there's a challenge, or we know that we're being drawn to something, but we procrastinate and resist it. So we put all these barriers in the way of being too busy. But actually you can get very smart with your time, and carve out time and look at your day or your week or your month, and look at, okay, what really needs to be done? Is it, do I need to do everything? Can I ask for help? Can I We can all create that time, can't we? We can all look at our time leaks and actually create some abundance in our time. So thank
Yeah,
you,
you're
Susan.
absolutely right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and thank you for that, Susan, because one of the reasons that I haven't written a second book is because I don't have time. That's the little, I don't have time. But listening to you, I know that it is time, and I know you do amazing things, so you would definitely be my mentor for that, and to help me with that. And I recommend Susan to everybody. She's a brilliant writer, and she has the most generous, wonderful heart with all her expertise and knowledge. So I would highly recommend Susan. That's one of the reasons she's on the show.
Thank you.
um,
Thank you.
it, are there any other things that for people to make it easier? So that's how somebody can start their book. So what can they do to make it easier for themselves while they're writing, other than have you, of course, as support?
Well, thank you for that. And I really, really appreciate the kind words. That means a lot to me,
Mm,
especially coming from you, Jen, who are
mm.
an incredible mentor yourself.
Thank
So
you. Thank
much
you.
appreciated. I think probably the last thing would be educate yourself about the book publishing and book marketing processes. What is this
Mhm,
journey going to look like for you?
mhm,
What are the different publishing options? There are 4 different publishing options right now, main ones. And back to your why again, the one that will be most appropriate for your book will relate to why are you doing this? Because each one
mhm.
has different implications for the adventure. So find out what those are, and what the differences are, and what the benefits and the drawbacks to each one are. Because I don't think there's a perfect publishing method. I think we make the best choice we can, knowing what we know.
And
So
also what fits us as well, what fits our style, and what, yeah, it's the same with everything, isn't
exactly.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, and revenue. As a traditionally published author, I get $2 for every book that sells. This
Hmm.
is not a revenue stream. So if I were doing this to make money, this is not the option that I would choose, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
actually, most options don't make a lot of money for books. We typically will do it for other reasons other than
Hmm.
book sales. But I do know someone who has sold 500,000 copies of her book. So,
Wow.
it is
Hmm.
possible to do it big time.
Yes.
And again, from a book marketing perspective, okay, what is that? What does that look like? How
Hmm.
did she sell 500,000 copies of her book? That's amazing. Do I want to put the effort into doing that too?
Hmm.
Um, so I think the more you know about the processes and the opportunities, the better choices you can make along the way in order to have the right fit experience for
Yes.
yourself, because we're creating an experience for ourselves. I think that's part of why book writing is a transformational experience, is that we are
Yeah.
creating an experience, and that experience will change us.
Hmm. Yes. That's very, very helpful. I'm sure the listeners, our audience, will be very inspired and motivated, and hopefully think a bit more and take some action towards this writing their book, because we, as you say, we all have something unique to offer, and if you have that calling in your heart, um, it is there for a reason, so act on it. And Susan, you have something to offer, don't you? You created a wonderful program for people that are looking at writing a book or kickstarting their book. Can you tell us about that? What's the title, and tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, thank you for that opportunity, Jen. Yes, so I've created the Kickstart Book Writing Formula. It's a
Hmm.
6-week program to help people get started. And I think I did a fair bit of market research, a lot of market research about this. And I was kind of surprised that people had trouble starting. because I starting wasn't my problem. Like I was able to start, I just didn't get going. Like that first book, I couldn't finish. But starting seems to be something that a lot of people struggle with. So the Kickstart book writing formula is a 6-week program designed to go through all of the steps that help people get going, that get
Hmm.
in gear, figure out what they need in order to be the best writer they can be. And we go through mindset because that's a really important one. We look at why. We get people very connected to their why. I
Hmm.
help them with that creating time. We go through an exercise during the course, which I just love, and I do it periodically myself. It's a time audit, a simple time audit, to, as you were mentioning, where are those leaks?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we find those leaks, and then bringing that into conscious awareness helps you be in a position of choice about,
Hmm.
do I really need to spend 2 hours every night watching Netflix, or could I take an hour and work on my book for an hour?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it's a wonderful program. I really love it. We've had some amazing people graduate out of it and move on
Fantastic.
into completing their book. It's like a huge super boost start to the book, so that
Hmm.
people come out of that program knowing what to do. They're connected to their book. They are confident in what they're doing and in the book that they're writing. And it's just such a blessing to be able to offer that. So I run that 3 times a year,
Right.
and would
Okay.
love to
Marvelous.
have I'd love to have your listeners join me,
And
and let's play with your book.
yes, and we'll include those links in the description of the podcast. And if somebody wants to reach you and talk a bit more and wants to work one on one with you, or wants to work on a deeper level, how would they? Would they reach you by email or through your website?
Email is probably the easiest, and my email
Okay.
address is Susan, Susan, at crossmancommunications.com. And I'm
Okay.
sure
And
you'll put
we'll
that in the show notes too. But yeah, just
absolutely.
email me. Let's book a time to chat about your project, and
Mhm.
see how I can help you.
Mm.
See what we can create.
Marvelous. And as I said, we'll have all that information in the description. So I highly recommend you connect with Susan if you're thinking about or you're stuck writing a book. She's a wonderful person to work with, and her energy, as I said before, is it's very inspiring. And her writing, I've read a few of her forwards in books, and it just takes your breath away. It's so, and I'm struggling with words as I'm talking about how creative and what a wordsmith you are. I'm kind of stumbling over my words. But yes, Susan, you're such a genius in this, in your zone. So thank you
Thank
so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jen. Such an honor to be here, and so much support for you and your listeners. Just do it. Sit down and do it. You've
Thank
got
you.
this. You've got it.
Yes. Yeah. And there's always support and there's always help. So you don't have to do this alone. Certainly, you don't have to do anything alone. There's always somebody that can help you. But thank you very much for listening. And we'll look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of Exponential Potential Podcast. Take care. Till next time. Bye bye. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your comments and feedback. And if you've enjoyed it, please click on that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and feel free to share. Join us for our next episode of the Exponential Potential Podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change.